Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 3rd day of September. This is YML, Your Mac Life show number 1023. Thank you guys very much for joining us, whether you're tuned in live or via the archive. And Paul from Amplified, if you're listening, I know you're not, but this is my normal voice, dude. I've got no other voice. He accused me of sounding like a 70s DJ. And while that might be true, I can't help it, man. I've only got 2 other voices. I've got this one, and I've got this creepy old man voice. And everyone hates the creepy old man voice. So those are the only choices I got. I got 3 voices. One several octaves higher, which hurt, and creepy guy voice, which just creeps people out, and I can't use that one anymore. So yeah, this is my voice. When I first talked to Dan Benjamin about doing the Amplified show, subbing in for him for a few weeks, Dan said, "So that's your real voice?" I said, "Yeah, man." It's I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I thought that, that was a put-on voice. I don't even know what that means. It's not something ever occurs to me would be to use a different voice than the one I use every day of my life. So for him to say that, yeah, he was amazed that this was my real voice. And yeah, sorry, this is what I got. On tonight's show, as always, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about security, about Apple announcements, about big giant structures next to the Flint Center, about all kinds of stuff. And we'll also be chatting to our good friend Mike Rose. Mike is a TUAW blogger, columnist, writer, whatever you want to call him. He's written a very interesting article about 2-factor authentication and iCloud and why it may not be as secure as you think it is. It's still secure. Don't make any mistakes thinking that all of this Jennifer Lawrence stuff means that you personally are any less secure. I don't think you're any more secure. I don't think you're any less secure either. We'll talk to Mike about that and many, many other things with regards to this awful, awful story. I saw someone wrote in an article, the first line was, they said, when I first heard about the Jennifer Lawrence pics, I thought, oh, I have to go look. No, that's not what your first thought should have been. Your first thought should have been perhaps what my first thought is, oh, that poor thing. My second thought was, oh my God, what a shitstorm this is going to be. I mean, I don't understand. Part of it's because I don't care about celebrities. I don't care about the personal life of celebrities. I care about the personal lives of my friends. That's it. I don't care who's sleeping with who in Hollywood and who's breaking up with who in Hollywood and who's doing what with who in Hollywood. I don't care. I care about what you do on the various screens I watch, on TV, on movies. I care about the music you create. I care about the books you write, the photography you do. That's it. I don't care. Literally don't care. Capital DONTCARE. Do not care about your personal life. I have no interest in seeing Jennifer Lawrence naked. If for no other reason, there's all kinds of other porn on the internet. We go searching for this kind of porn for, there's lots of other stuff. Playboy.com. Duh. I don't understand why you'd... And by the way, anyone in the IRC or anyone listening live or via the archive, do not tell me that you've seen these pictures. I don't want to know, because it makes you an asshole. And I don't want to know that any of you are assholes. It makes you a complete jerk, at the very least, for participating in this sex crime. This crime, if nothing else. This is not a data breach. This is not a boo-boo. This is not about security. This is about a theft, a crime. And I'm glad to hear and see that the FBI is getting involved in this. I don't think anything's going to come of that aspect of it, but I'm glad to see that they're taking this that seriously, because I think it is that serious. As Penn Jillette wrote on Twitter, you have no right to see any of these celebrities' pictures unless they give them to you. That's it. That's where it stops. It doesn't matter that they did or didn't have good security preventing bad guys. It doesn't matter. It's the bad guys' fault. It's not Jennifer Lawrence's fault for not having a strong enough password. It's the bad guy's fault. It's not my fault for having easily picked door locks It's the guy who kicks in my door and steals my stereo. It's his fault. Make no mistake about it. This is not on the victim, which we tend to do way too much in our society. Blame the, especially when it comes to women. Blame the victim. Oh, she was asking for it. Oh, she shouldn't have dressed that way. I saw on the Daily Show last night a very funny bit about, I tweeted this. I don't know if you guys saw the Fox News. There's some sort of panel of, I guess, 4 or 5 women. And they're basically saying that catcalling is okay. That it's okay for men to yell out things at women, not to women, at women on the street. And I can't remember her name, but the young black the young black comedian on the Daily Show had this great line of, her going to work is not a performance. It's not up for you to clap or whistle or say anything. And I have no problem. Keep in mind, my favorite people in the world are women. I love women. I love everything about them. The way they smell and their hair and the way they look. But I have never once in my entire life ever whistled at a woman on the street, ever yelled at a woman on the street. And by the way, guys, no woman has ever responded positively to that. No woman will ever, if you yell something or whistle at them, come over to you and go, yeah, baby, take me out for a drink. Never going to happen. So don't do it. It treats them like objects. Them walking down the street is not a performance for you to judge. They're going about their lives. Leave them alone. I have no problem appreciating the beauty of a woman as she walks on the street. Just like I have no problem appreciating the beauty of a Ferrari that drives by me. I will look at that Ferrari. I will not whistle at that Ferrari. That Ferrari is an object of beauty and art. That woman, not an object. She may be beautiful, but she's not an object. She's a human being. Treat her as such. How many of you guys use two-factor authentication for iCloud or Google or other things? Send me an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. If you use it, why? If you don't use it, why not? If you use it, what do you think of it? I was using it for a while, but I found it just so annoying. And that's part of the problem. The other problem is now I don't have a cell phone plan, so I can't get notifications for two-factor authentication the way it's set up with iPhones. So what are your security procedures for iCloud and your mail and Google and things like that? I mean, a lot of us hopefully use 1Password. I do on my desktop. On my iOS devices, I don't go to websites that require my 1Password passwords. We were talking about this on Twitter yesterday. There's a website that shows you how secure, I'll see if I can't dig it up while I'm talking, how secure your passwords are. And it lets you know how strong it is. And one of the passwords that I grabbed out of 1Password, it said, let me see if I can't dig this up. howsecureismypassword.net is the website. And I just cut and pasted a password in there. And it told me that it would take a PC 157 billion years to crack my password. And I posted that on Facebook and Twitter. And someone said, but that you just gave them your password. They could then steal the website, How Secure Is My Password, could be a honeypot and could be stealing your password. Yeah, they could be. But guess what? As soon as I gave them the password, I changed it immediately to a different password, to a different recipe of the password. It's now got more numbers and digits and characters and spaces and stuff than it did before. 1Password is so easy to use and so fast. I could give you my password to my bank website, and I could change it faster than you could get into the website. That's how fast 1Password is. The only downside I've ever found to 1Password is if I lose my 1Password, the way 1Password works, folks, is you create 1Password, and then you let 1Password create all the other passwords. So think of your 1Password as the umbrella, and all the other passwords are underneath that umbrella. And they're very difficult to figure out. They're not words. They're characters and numbers and letters and uppercase and lowercase and all kinds of different things. They're passwords you can't remember unless you're some Sheldon Cooper idiot savant. So I don't know my password for my bank site. I don't know my password for iCloud. I don't know my password for Apple's website. I literally do not know them. I know my 1Password password. That's all I need to know. But it's not as elegant on the iOS devices. It's no good to me if I go to a friend's house. But in those situations, you shouldn't be going to password-protected sites anyway. Now, I would never go to my bank website on a public Wi-Fi network. I would never do it at a friend's house. So let me know what you guys use for security, how you back things up. And remember, security and backing things up are two different things. I think it's one of the confusions that folks have. They kind of go hand in hand. For example, I have a backup right here on this hard drive. The problem is this hard drive is not very secure. As you can see, it's just lying around until I plug it in. If somebody breaks into my house and steals this, it's backed up, but it's not very secure. On air at yourmaclifeshow.com. And then finally on tonight's show in our starting point photography segment, we're going to be talking about light trails. I went down to our Pacific National Exhibit, which I've talked about a couple times on the show, the PNE, or State Fair here in Vancouver, and had a lot of fun, actually, taking light trail photos. What a light trail photo is, I'll show you an example of that for you folks watching the video. A light trail photo is when you set up your camera so that it captures, in the dark, lights that are generally moving, Ferris wheels and tilt-a-whirls and loop-to-loops and things like that. And it's a specific kind of photography. You have to set your camera up in a particular kind of way. We'll talk about how you do that on the iPhone, on your point-and-shoot, and on a DSLR a little later on the show. So we'll talk to our good friend Mike Rose from TUAW about iCloud 2-factor authentication. But up next, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King, joined in our phone room now by our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, I want to talk to you about the Apple announcement. Apple has announced that they're going to be doing an event next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Now, as we said earlier, it's been widely reported that you flew into California specifically to get your invite, as our friend Arcsine said. Arcsine said, Jim Dalrymple got his invite on a red velvet pillow handed to him and held by Sir Jonathan I, bitches.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it was written that I flew in for that, and it would be, that's no coincidence that I happened to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely no coincidence at all that you've been there hanging around like a Canadian hobo since May.
Yep. Yeah, I got here in May and been here ever since.
Trapped.
So
man with no country, trapped at the San Francisco International Airport. So the typical of Apple announcements, there was no hint given, or not much of a hint, no matter what folks are prudering.
Less this time than any time before, I think.
Well, doesn't it depend on how you read the invite? I mean, first of all, 999 sounds like they're not going to announce anything. 99, that's no in German. It's kind of obvious they're not going to announce anything because they're doing a 99.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be funny?
Maybe.
That would just make us.
That would be funny.
That would be the funniest thing in the world if Apple.
Jokes on you, people.
That's right. If you were Apple, wouldn't you just once do something like that? I mean, no, I know it would jerk a number of people around, but wouldn't it be tempting just a one day going, yeah, you know what, got nothing to announce, but thanks for coming. Snacks are over there.
If I had $160 billion, I'd do that every day.
I'd invite particular members of the media too, like only 5 guys. Hey, just you 5 guys. Come on.
Yeah, come on, fly out.
That's right. On a moment's notice, tomorrow. You're gonna be here tomorrow. And you have to fly business class. Yeah, business class. It only costs you $7,000, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then just show them a cheese plate. There you go, boys. Wish we could say more. Obviously, we know Apple's going to announce something on 9/9/2014. We're not going to talk about what they're going to announce. We're going to assume it's an iPhone and possibly an iPad and other stuff. Now, you were, again, as we said, already in the area when you got the invite, and you drove down to the Flint Center. And I think yours were the first pictures, at least the first pictures I saw, of the actual location. And when you came around the corner and saw the Flint Center and then saw what you saw, what did you think?
I didn't know what to think, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, you drive around the corner and there's all these construction workers and this giant building. Yeah. And I was thinking, what is that? Then, it does look like an Apple structure. I mean, so there's a parking garage right beside the Flint Center. So I went all the way up to the top of the parking garage and got my camera and started taking some pictures. And I thought, for me, that looks like a hands-on area. Yeah. Apple makes some announcements. They always have a hands-on section. That looks like a gigantic hands-on area to me. So, and that's what I wrote. I don't know if it is or not. I mean, that's what it looks like.
But that being the case, I mean, the Flint Center already has a hands-on area. That's the thing that got me when people started saying this was good to, the Flint Center, for those folks who don't know, is where Apple has announced previous Macintoshes, and it's a larger building than what they've done in the past at the Town Hall Center in One Infinite Loop, or even at the Yerba Buena Center next to the Moscone. It's significantly larger than both those buildings, but they already have a hands-on center in the Flint Center. Why would Apple be needing to build a 3-story structure next to the Flint Center?
Well, considering that this place is a lot bigger, I know that you have some thoughts on this, but there are some practical reasons too. Considering that the Flint Center is so much bigger than the other venues, you have to accommodate more people in a hands-on area. And in some cases, the Flint Center is several times larger and can fit several times more people. Sure. So, you have to consider that a hands-on area has to be able to do the same.
And that's true as far as it goes. But when I first saw the images that you had posted up on loopinsight.com, my first thought was, why is a hands-on area needing to be 3 stories high? This thing is 30 to 40 feet high. And so I thought, well, there's a reason for that. Now, there's one of 2 reasons. Either Apple is faking everybody out, and they're building it higher than they need to, which is certainly a possibility. Apple's been known to fake things out before. Or, in my mind, they're building a home inside of that structure, a temporary home-like thing, to show off the iHome thing, iHome kit kind of idea that they've been talking about for a little while. I think that makes at least a little bit of sense, don't you?
Well, I think it does. You know, when you said that, that could ring true. It'd be interesting to show off some of these new products if they have that capability. So
I think one of the things that we see in the pictures that you posted over at loopinsight.com is it looks like there's one larger building, and it's not just a straight up cube either. If the pictures are to be believed, and as we've always said, you're not the greatest photographer, so I'm going to have to ask you of this. It doesn't look like it's a straight square or a straight rectangle, does it? It looks like there's bits jutting off of it.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like different levels or something. So
in the back of in the back of one section of it, there's a smaller cube. I think that's where they're going to show off the health kit surgery, where they'll look for volunteers and they'll, considering it's the assembled media, there'll be some sort of brain surgery going on back there. They'll replace the brains of Mike Arrington with that of a chicken and turn the chicken into a babbling idiot.
Well, I've already submitted your name for a volunteer. So
thanks very much. I appreciate that, dude. Thank you.
If you get a last minute call, you know what it's about.
That's right. I've come down for my brainectomy. It's going to be interesting. Now, you and I talked about this earlier. Do you think this is going to be, as CNET described it, and I wish they hadn't described it in this particular fashion, a make or break event for Apple?
I don't think it's a make or break.
No.
You can't take a company like Apple that sells so many devices and say that one event is going to be a make or break.
Yep.
People expect things from Apple as far as products go and as far as design and functionality goes. And the fact that Apple is doing what it's doing right now to, build a separate structure and to have it at such a big venue, I think they're confident that they will exceed expectations. So given that, I still don't think it's make or break.
Yeah.
Apple could come out with, iPhones and whatever it's going to release, and they're still going to sell millions of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe this is a make or break for CNET.
Yeah, no. If that was the case, CNET was broken a long time ago. I think you're right in the sense that Apple is definitely signaling to the world, to their staff, their employees, to the media, to the average person, that this is an important event for Apple. I don't think there's any doubt about that Apple believes this is an important event. But as to make or break, you're right. There's no way this would break Apple, and there's no way it would make Apple. Apple doesn't need to be made. Guess what, kids? It's already made.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see this as anything like that. I mean, I see what happened with Samsung today with the Galaxy Note 4 as a make or break event. And I said, even in the post, jokes aside, this is serious for Samsung, because the Galaxy S5 did not sell well.
Yep.
Even the iPhone 5S, it's a year old, outsold it.
Yep.
The Galaxy Notes have not sold well, and then they came out with a Galaxy 4 Note, and they said that there's nothing really fantastic about it.
Yeah.
It met all of the specs, but that's about it. And people had commented to me on Twitter and said, but don't analysts say this about all products? Even the iPhones when they come out. And that's absolutely true, except that Samsung is already in a bit of trouble here. So they have to be concerned that, they're releasing all of this stuff and nobody's buying anymore. So then you start to worry. So if Apple comes out with an iPhone 6 and it doesn't meet expectations, there's nothing spectacular about it, but they still sell 50 million of them, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
If they only sell 1 million of them, okay, now you got to start to worry. So then the next product you release has to be really spectacular.
Yeah.
And that's where Samsung is. They released the S5, it didn't sell. The next product really has to be spectacular, and that's the Note 4, and it's not very spectacular. So that's my point, that this is a very serious situation for them.
Did you see any of the coverage of the Galaxy Note Edge?
No.
This odd little...
oh, yes, I did see that.
It seems like it's got two screens, one tiny one going vertical up and down the right-hand side of the display, which, as I found out from reading about it, means that the thing is useless for those who hold their phone in their right freaking hand.
No, their left hand.
Okay, whichever.
If you hold it in your left hand, you basically cover up that little thing, and you'll be pressing buttons all day long. But
isn't it true if you're right-handed too?
Well, no, because you don't hold it upside down, you moron.
Well, no. No, but I'm thinking if you hold it in your left hand, your fingers are going to be touching that screen, right?
No, if you hold, it's made for right-handed people.
Okay, for right-handed people to hold in their left hand.
So right-handed people would hold it in their right hand.
No, they wouldn't. Okay, now who's the moron? Right-handed people would hold it in their left hand and use their right finger to do stuff.
No, they wouldn't. I'm left-handed. I use my left hand to hold my iPhone, and I type with my thumb.
With your left thumb, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but if this thing has a pen and you're using the pen, what would you then do?
I would throw the pen away and use my thumb.
Regardless, I think this is a dumb idea. I watched the video over at The Verge, and it just didn't seem to be. It just seemed to be a nerdy, geeky implementation for the sake of doing it, not because it's actually a better idea. Do you think this is actually a good idea?
Well, if you look at The Verge's video, and who did the video?
David Pierce.
Yeah, David Pierce. I like David's video.
Yeah.
And I think overall David did a good job in describing what this thing did. The one thing that was kind of cool is that because it has that curved piece of glass, when you go to bed at night, you can turn on the clock and just lay the phone down and the clock stares right at you. So there's one thing.
You like that?
That was kind of cool. I did like that.
Really? Okay.
I thought it was silly, and even he said this is silly, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like that too. But then he started saying, and then you can see notifications on this tiny little curved piece of glass, and I thought, oh God, no! don't try and read your notifications on that little piece of glass.
Yeah.
Just stop at the alarm clock. That was perfect. So. But yeah, I can see that being difficult to use just because you hold it in your hand, and you're going to hit that little piece of glass. But we'll see how it sells. I mean, maybe it's going to sell like hotcakes, and that curved piece of glass will be on every phone from here to Japan.
Sure, it's certainly possible. The other thing that Samsung announced today was the Samsung Gear S, wearing the most powerful smartwatch yet. Now, it's interesting you said you liked David Pierce's stuff, because David has the single stupidest comment I read about this stuff in that piece, where he says, the Gear S is not designed to replace your smartphone, I'm told. It's designed to let you leave it at home. Isn't that a replacement?
Yeah.
so I mean, right there, this guy made me think,
okay, well,
you're an idiot.
I don't like David Pierce anymore.
I mean, that's just dumb to say that. It is designed to be a replacement.
Yeah, I can't really see that.
But then the other aspect of this thing is that this is huge. This is basically strapping an iPhone to your wrist.
Yeah.
And he's got little tiny girly man wrists too, so this thing looks even gianter on his little chicken arms.
We'll have to see how it all goes.
I saw a couple of comments, interesting stuff on Twitter when I commented on this, and it's the same comments we see very often when it comes to these kinds of announcements and devices. The fact that nobody can ever agree, at least the majority of people can ever agree, that this particular implementation is a good smartwatch. This I like. You never see a majority of people or a large number of people saying, oh yeah, this is the one. It keeps pointing out to me the fact that I don't think a smartwatch in this kind of implementation is ever going to be anything Apple's going to do. Are you at Tim Hortons again?
I'm not at Tim Hortons.
We used to have this problem all the time where you were going out and ordering Tim Hortons in the middle of the show.
I would do that, though.
I know you would. You did it all the freaking time. But, I mean, am I right in guessing at that this is another indication of how a smartwatch is never going to be anything more than just not even a nerd or a geek toy, but a dork toy?
Well, I think it depends on how you design it. I mean, it's but I'm not sure that that's the case.
Really?
I think a lot of it depends on. So
we can still hear you.
A lot of it, no, you can't.
Yes, I can.
I think it depends on how you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, for some people may want this as a replacement, but I don't think that many people do. Can I get a medium coffee, please?
Aha! I knew it. You couldn't wait 10 more minutes.
Don't bother me when I'm ordering coffee, man.
Yeah, so for me, it's just I can't see of all the various versions. And by the way, folks, as Brian Monroe pointed out earlier in the pre-show, this is the 6th different device that Samsung's announced this year. This year, 9 months, they've announced 6 different devices.
Well, and people have to also understand that not only do they announce these devices, but then they also announce later on different colors of said devices.
Yeah.
So I think at one point, maybe it was with the S4, didn't they have like a dozen different models?
Possibly.
Of these devices. I believe I wrote about that at one point, and I believe that they had like a dozen different models.
Yeah.
Colors are one thing, but they were naming them different and, all that kind of stuff. If Samsung wants to come out with, okay, here are 5 different colors of the Galaxy S5. Great. Okay. 5 different colors. Mm-hmm. One model, 5 different colors.
Yep.
But that's not what they do, and I think that they confuse the situation, if you ask me. Well, which model do I get? Is it the Galaxy S5 SQ or is it the Galaxy S5 Gold?
Yeah.
So, I think it adds a lot of complexity to a buying decision that really doesn't need complexity.
I think the other thing is they open themselves up to the very famous. I don't know if it's a marketing thing, but it's the idea of paralysis by analysis. If you give consumers too many choices, they won't make any choice at all. And I think that's what Samsung is doing. It's just you go into a store, you go into a store that sells these things, a Verizon store, a Microsoft store, and there's too many options, and you just end up going, I can't pick, and you walk away, and you don't buy a thing. Whereas Apple, people complain that Apple only releases one thing a year, but when you go into the store, you know whether you're going to buy it or not. There's no confusion.
Exactly right.
If it's April, I'm pretty sure they're not going to announce another one until September, so, okay, it's a fair enough time frame for me. I'll buy a new iPhone. Oh, what color do I want? That's the hardest decision I got to make is what color? How many gigabytes? 2 decisions? We're done.
Yep.
It's simple and it's easy.
That's exactly right, and that's the way it should be. And it's the same with their entire product line. Macs.
Yep.
You know, same thing. I mean, the most complicated would probably be the MacBooks, but it's not that complicated because you go by size first, and then, you know, power.
Yeah.
It's a very easy decision.
It's pretty damn easy. Speaking of easy and things that are easy and things that aren't easy, let's talk about this security breach. Any number of ways to describe this thing. Everyone knows the story by now that some Hollywood celebrities had their data stolen, in particular nude pictures of themselves and probably others stolen. As everyone hopefully realizes, this is a matter of theft. This is less a matter of security and data integration and iCloud and things like that. This is the underlying question of this is a theft, and who's going to get punished for it. That being said,
right.
Apple, everyone pointed the finger at Apple right off the top that this was going to be a problem with iCloud. This was going to be a problem with the way Apple does things. Apple came out with a statement that said, no, there's no security breach in the way we do things. They didn't blame the victim, but they said that it was probably more of a social engineering thing where they got the details from someone else, or it was a brute force hack or password hack or things like that. What are your thoughts on where responsibility lies with all this, Jim?
Well, if Apple didn't have a secure service, then that's a problem for them, and they should be blamed.
Yes.
The way that it looks, though, is that Apple's iCloud service is secure, and for instance, I guess you and I don't need to worry about, there's a hack out there that will open up everybody's account.
Yeah.
You know, so in other words, it is secure. If it wasn't secure, then a single hack would open up everybody's account, and you could just grab anybody's pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
By the way it looked, that can't happen. So iCloud is secure. What ended up happening is that they used basically brute force to hack individual passwords. So these people were targeted.
Yeah.
And you know, if they targeted Jennifer Lawrence and these other people, password, then you can't blame Apple for that. You know, it's like, you know, if you need to back up and you don't, and your computer crashes and you don't have a backup, that's not Apple's fault. You know, I mean, there's only so much Apple can do, and securing their own networks is their responsibility. It appears that they've done that. So I don't know what else they could have done in this situation.
The ever stupid Chris Matuzak from CNET has a story. Apple's iPhone 6 show under a cloud after a leak of nude pics. Do you think this will affect Apple's announcements next week in any way, shape, or form?
I think the general public, without really understanding what happened, may say, "Oh, iCloud it got hacked," and maybe not even understand what that means. But because these celebrities have such a wide following themselves, you know, it could have an effect on the perception of iCloud safety. But will it have an actual effect on the announcement? No, I don't believe so.
Arxine in the IRC chat room wants to know, ask Jim if this celebrity nudes is just a huge attention-getting detail that mainstream journalists latch onto, just like tech media latches onto Apple angles. Security is a big ongoing challenge.
Of course. Anything to do with Apple is a big headline getter. And if Apple somehow falters, then people are going to be all over it. Now, we talked about the security of Apple's network, but clearly there was an issue.
Yes.
Because the hackers were able to brute force the password. So there was an issue, and Apple needed to address that, and quickly, and they did. Now, should that issue have ever happened? No.
Yeah.
It should. It shouldn't have been there. They found it. They cleared it up, and everything is good now. Doesn't help Jennifer Lawrence much, but it is done. So Apple needs to take its punishment and its lumps for that. But the media that are trying to give Apple more of the blame than it deserves, and I would say this about any company out there, that if you don't have a secure password and it's only you that gets hacked,
mm-hmm.
I would say that the problem is with you. If your bank gets hacked and they steal millions of users, that's a problem with the bank.
Yeah.
That's not a problem with you. But if there are hundreds of millions of users and it's just you that gets hacked, sorry. I don't want to blame the victim either, but come on.
Folks, heading over to Darren. Sorry, go ahead.
And it doesn't matter if it's Apple or Samsung or Google or anybody else. And if it's only a few people, they were targeted.
Folks, head on over to daringfireball.net. Gruber's got a security trade-offs article. It's very interesting to read. Don't read the link story that he posts, if only because the title of it is Blame Apple. 5 reasons why celebrities and civilians should never trust Apple with nude photos or any data at all, by David Auerbach, who's obviously a freaking moron. The thing that Gruber says that's very interesting, I think gets to the heart of all of this, is your data is far safer from irretrievable loss if it is synced, backed up regularly to a cloud-based service. But your data is more at risk of being stolen if it is synced, backed up regularly to a cloud-based service. That's the dichotomy that we have here. That's the problem that we have here, is that as soon as the data leaves your hands, the chances of it being stolen go up exponentially. And that's the problem that people don't really seem to get and conceptualize when it comes to security. There are so many aspects of this stuff that the average person is really confused by. And this is something you and I have talked about before, Jim, but what is Apple's responsibility to, if nothing else, us Mac users, us iOS device users?
See, I think that's where people are starting to get it wrong in blaming the company.
Yeah.
I think, when you look at, that dichotomy of the more we put up there, the more vulnerable we are. Well, that's true unless you have a good password that you can protect your stuff. At some point, you have to be able to help your own security and protect yourself.
Yeah.
If your password is password 1234 or your birth date or your dog's name, you're gonna get hacked.
Mm-hmm, sure.
It's gonna happen. So I don't see how you can blame any company if your password is so insecure that it can be hacked like that.
And finally, before we let you go, we'll talk about this is, to me, an embarrassing story at Recode. It's not embarrassing when the morons at Cult of Mac write this stuff, but to me it's embarrassing when a supposedly respected outfit like Recode writes line forms at New York Apple Store for products yet to be unveiled. There's a lineup outside the Fifth Avenue Apple Store right now for, according to every single media outlet who's reported this, it's a lineup for the iPhone 6. What's wrong with this story, Jim?
Well, if you go by history, they're going to have a long wait.
That's true, but it's also not a lineup for the iPhone 6. It's a lineup for the media to interview these people. These people are not waiting in line for the iPhone 6. They're waiting in line for various media outlets to come and talk to them and show off their T-shirt that advertises this company, or lets them mention that they're working on this app, or that tells them that they're working for this company. These people are just guerrilla marketing whores. And the media is encouraging them by interviewing them. Guess what, media? If you didn't interview these people, guess what would happen? They wouldn't show up. That proves they're not there for the iPhone 6. They're there so the media can stick a microphone in their face and write down their name and get a business card from these folks. And it happens in every single story. Every single story mentions these people and mentions their affiliation, mentions the company that they work for, or the app that they're working on, or the thing that they're in line for. You're just encouraging these people by mentioning them, giving them free marketing.
Yeah, and it comes off as news.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's hard enough for people to figure out what is news and what isn't news, but when respected news outlets get it wrong, how can you expect the other guys to get it right?
Yeah. Tail wags the dog.
Exactly. Folks, that's it for him. Jim Dalrymple's Amplified. We recorded it this morning, but it'll get posted up tomorrow on the iTunes Store. Do a search for Amplified on the iTunes Store, and it will come up, me and Jim talking about this and a bunch of other stuff. Had a great conversation with you, Jim, about Marshall stacks. Actually, after we finished talking, I did a little bit more research. Really fascinating stuff, and if you want to learn more about that, check it out. It'll be posted up on the loopinsight.com tomorrow and up also on the iTunes Store. Jim, thanks for joining me, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Shawn.
Have a good night. See ya.
Bye.
I turned the wrong microphone down. There we go. Thanks very much to Jim for joining me. Hopefully, if I check in our Google Hangout window, we should see Mike Rose. Mikey. I got to find the Google Hangout window. Sorry. How can I lose stuff on a 30-inch monitor? How do you actually manage to lose screens on a 30-inch monitor? Looking, Divine. I see Brian, Divine, Jim, Marcus, Maurice, Philip, and Sherry. No Mike Rose. What the hell is Mike Rose? Oh, come on. Could somebody poke Mike Rose via iTunes? Sorry, via Twitter? Mike T. Rose at Mike T. Rose, and tell him, oh, I didn't send the URL link. Crap. Never mind. Hang on. Wait. It's all my fault. Crap. All right, talk amongst yourselves. I forgot to send Mike the URL for the. It's one of those things where I sit around all day long thinking, what have I forgotten? And this is what I've forgotten. I've forgotten to send the link for. Oh, hang on. All right, let me go to Twitter. Well, I'm on Twitter webpage. I haven't been on the Twitter webpage in months. Mike Rose. Private message to Mike Rose. And I'll also send him another message at Mike. And tweet it. I'm sorry. Sorry, folks. Completely my fault. Yeah, so I sit around during the day, and there's Mike Rose. Get him in the chat room, unplug his microphone. Define, where is he? Where is he? Michael. Show in broadcast. I don't hear, okay, now, I unmuted Mike? Why can't I mute Michael? Oh, for crying out loud!
There we go. I'm here.
There we go. Oh, so tell me that was your fault.
No, I have no idea whose fault it was. I blame the internet gods.
Blame the internet, folks. This is Mike Rose from TUAW. Mike, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you, Shawn?
I'm not too bad.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. You're a little stressed out because tomorrow's the first day of school for your kids, isn't it?
Oh my gosh! Don't even get me started. New York City schools open tomorrow, and it's just a nightmare. I mean, it's a nightmare. Everything that could go wrong. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine. Couple last minute things to take care of.
Is it weird they're starting on a Thursday? Don't they usually start on Tuesdays?
You know, they usually would start right after Labor Day, or they start on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Because it's the week of Labor Day, they did not want to start the Tuesday. They need to give the teachers a day to get back into it, or at least 1 or possibly 2 days to get back into it. So they started on Thursday.
Because up here in Canada, it was always the Tuesday after Labor Day was when we always went back to school. Now, and some kids have gone back to school in August, haven't they?
Yeah, a bunch of down south and in other parts of the country, they started a lot earlier. There were kids who were back second week of August. There were kids who were back a couple weeks ago.
You'd think if they were back to school so much earlier, the kids down south would be smarter.
You're not going to catch me commenting on that.
You coward!
This is not my first day on the internet. I'm not doing that.
Okay. Again, Mike Rose, TUAW, wrote a really interesting article over at TUAW about two-factor authentication. And you think iCloud's two-factor authentication protects your privacy? It doesn't. And that's a big thing for you to say, Mike. First of all, explain to the audience what iCloud two-factor authentication actually is.
It is a lovely bit of internet jargon. Now, two-factor authentication simply means that you are, in order to prove your identity, in order to authenticate to a service like Gmail or iCloud or Amazon or anybody, you're not just using a single piece of information like a password or a username and password combination. Okay. You're using a combination of something that you know, like a password, and something that you have, like a code, a device, a fingerprint, biometrics, or something else. The idea is just separating out those two kinds of identification and presenting them both to the service that's trying to figure out who's trying to access it, hence two-factor authentication.
With the assumption being that the only person who could have both of those things is the person who's allowed into this account.
That's the working assumption, and obviously there are circumstances where that may not be the case. But this is something. The idea of two-factor authentication has been around for a long, long time. Anybody who's been in the corporate environment where you've used a secure ID token, or certain banks, I think this is probably true in Canada and certainly in Europe, certain banks, in order for you to access your account, will give you a card or a key fob that's going to generate a code every 30 or 60 seconds. That's two-factor authentication too, because it's something that you know, your PIN and your password, combined with something you have, which is the physical token.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned it. I remember when I worked for Apple 20 years ago, we had that little keychain that we had to use in order to be able to get into certain areas of either the building or actually on the computer. So this has been around for quite some time. That being the case, why hasn't it really caught on as a security measure?
It's something, at least in the U.S., that consumers aren't really familiar with. Certainly Google adding it as an option for logging into Google services, Gmail, and so forth has helped with awareness. Apple adding it obviously has helped with awareness, although Apple really hasn't publicized it as something that people should do. It's more presented as an option for consumers to use. I really think it's familiarity, and it's also a question of convenience. Certainly for a lot of the legacy services and banking folks that use it, I don't think consumers were exactly banging down their doors to be carrying around these key fobs. It really wasn't until you had simpler ways of using it, like the Google Authenticator app, which is open source, by the way. Other companies and other entities can take advantage of that code. But things like that, and things like SMS-based two-factor authentication, where you get a text message to make sure that you're you, that sort of thing makes it a lot easier for consumers to get a handle on.
It makes it easier, but it also makes it a little bit more annoying. And the worst thing you can do about security is annoy the person. I turned off two-factor authentication for exactly that reason, because it was just got annoying after a while. I don't really need it. I mean, my gear never leaves the house. I never worry about this kind of stuff. I don't have anything that I'm worth stealing, so I don't really worry about that stuff. So the reward wasn't worth the risk for me. Is that part of the problem? Is that this stuff gets annoying to people, and so therefore they don't use it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is deliberately putting a degree of sand into the gears, putting in a bit of friction in that authentication process, because it is asking you to do a little bit of extra work to verify that you are who you say you are. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're concerned about security, that makes a lot of sense. If you're not particularly worried about it, it doesn't. The fact is that folks who may think they don't need to worry about security sometimes do have to, and the best example of this prior to this weekend's events was probably Matt Honan from Wired, who had his iCloud account compromised. He had his iCloud password compromised through a fairly baroque chain of vulnerabilities, including Amazon exposing the last 4 digits of his credit card and having a recovery email address that was easily guessed at Gmail and so forth. But had Matt had two-factor authentication turned on his Gmail account, it would have simply prevented the hackers from getting to the place they needed to get. They would not have been able to access that account simply with a password, because the way that Google's two-factor authentication works is whenever you are accessing a Google service from an unfamiliar browser or an unfamiliar machine, you are challenged for that two-factor authentication. And that's probably why most consumers don't have that turned on, because that does get very annoying. You also have to, whenever you have a device or a third-party service that's accessing your Gmail, like a chat client, for example, or account or BusyCal, you need to create a one-time password in Google's account administration, and then you need to give that password, long random string, to your application. It is a more secure scheme than what Apple has by far, but it's also far more onerous for folks to set up and to use on an everyday basis.
We've got a couple comments in the Google Hangout chat. Divine Shadow says, it makes me a terrible person, but let's face it. The security of cell phones must be manageable by the same people that think they're going to win a Dodge Charger from a Facebook page that went up yesterday. He's not far wrong, is he? I mean, geeks and nerds and those kind of folks will turn this stuff on and be secure and things like that. But the vast majority of people who are victims of this are not geeks and nerds. They're not the Matt Honans who should know better. They're average moms and pops and actresses and actors in Hollywood who either don't know about this stuff or aren't familiar with the penalties for not having these things. It's not blaming the victim. It's informing the victim. It's letting people know about this stuff, but then also having companies that make this thing as not as easy as pie, but certainly as easy as possible. Is it right now? Could it be easier? Could it be more secure if it's easier?
Well, I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect security scheme, either from an ease of use, a consumer friendliness, or from a safety and security perspective. I think, in some regard, we're all Matt Honan, we're all Jennifer Lawrence, we're all Upton. Any one of us could be victimized in this way, and whether it's illicit pictures or bookmarks that we don't want to have exposed, or financial information, or legal documents, or anything. What was particularly disturbing or a wake-up call for me in researching my post about two-factor authentication, I set out to sort of dismiss some of the assumptions that people had about how Apple's service is set up. What I discovered is, in fact, if you actually go ahead and try to set up iCloud's control panel on a PC, which you would think would get you some sort of email or alert from Apple saying, hey, by the way, you've set this up on a new PC, you hear nothing at all. So someone in possession of your iCloud username and password could download your photos and your bookmarks to their computer, and you would never be the wiser.
Yeah, Apple would. That was the problem. Apple would never tell you that stuff. Folks, we're talking to Mike Rose from TUAW. He's got a great article at TUAW.com. Think iCloud's two-factor authentication protects your privacy? It doesn't. Another comment in the Google Hangout from our good friend Maurice. Mike's room clutter makes me feel better about my own. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, I knew that was coming. I almost put up a curtain or a comforter over everything before I came on the show.
Fine, don't worry about it. Brian Monroe says usernames and passwords are just a mess and really not going to work well for the next billion users. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that, and that's a point that a number of people have made. Apple moving forward with the iPhone 5S to give everybody the idea that biometrics and Touch ID is something that is not science fiction, but it's here now and it's a possibility for consumer devices today, I think is an important step. But it's pretty clear that the whole notion of a username and a password to access critical information is kind of flawed. First of all, it's very, very difficult from a security standpoint to prevent people from reusing those usernames and passwords. I mean, that is something at least the two-factor authentication tackles. But as my post talks about, the way that Apple has implemented it, it's much more about protecting your credit card and your wallet than it is about protecting your privacy and your personal information in the form of photos.
Divine Shadow in the Google Hangout. Apple's move into biometrics was designed for exactly this reason. Does two-factor future include the fingerprint reader? Do you believe that?
That's a great question and something that a lot of folks have suggested. Probably there is going to be some future interaction between the Touch ID sensor and two-factor authentication, keeping in mind that today, again, iCloud two-factor authentication is not the same sort of thing that you see with Google.
Yeah.
It's very specific, and what it does is it addresses 3 areas of Apple service. Once you set it up, you register a phone number that can receive SMSs. You register 1 or more iOS devices as trusted devices, and then it basically sits in the background and does nothing. It only comes up in 3 specific situations. Number 1 is if you try to log into the appleid.apple.com website and manage your Apple ID, so to make changes to the security settings. Number 2 is if you call 1-800-SOS-APPLE and say, I'm having a problem logging into my iCloud account or logging into iTunes. If you have two-factor authentication turned on, they will use that to verify that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
And the third way that it kicks in is if you make a purchase in iTunes, the App Store, or iBooks from a new device that Apple has not seen before. And in order to prove that you are who you say you are, at that point Apple's going to send you that challenge, that 4-digit two-factor authentication challenge.
Yeah.
That is the only places today, those are the only places where Apple's two-factor auth comes into play. Earlier this summer, there was a brief citing of some two-factor authentication prompts on the iCloud.com website, which would have applied to webmail and calendar and contacts and the iWork applications. Some more along the Google model where a lot more of your information was protected by two-factor authentication, but that actually has not rolled out yet, and it's not clear when or if Apple plans to do that.
Brian Monroe makes a comment in the IRC chat room. What about an iWatch iBand that uses Bluetooth LE to auto-unlock your stuff when you're near it and then locks it when you're away?
That's a pretty cool idea. There actually are some third-party applications that do that today using the iPhone or Android phones and using the Bluetooth hardware on your laptop. It's possible to have software running on your Mac that will automatically lock your Mac when your phone moves more than 10 feet away, which is a great idea. But Bluetooth, I don't believe the serialization in Bluetooth is hardened enough for it to be unspoofable, so that you could potentially spoof the Bluetooth ID of someone's device and get close to their computer and unlock it. That would be a potential problem. There's a really interesting technology, I'm trying to remember the name of the company, where they are using your actual cardiac rhythm as a biometric identifier, so that if you're walking into a secure area of a power plant or a data center, the cage, the door will only open if they are able to detect your particular idiosyncratic heart rhythm, like a fingerprint. So that's biometrics on a level that are frankly kind of scary and
no kidding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How much of this? One of the things that we've talked about on the show before, and I know you've written about it and talked about it, is the idea that we trust Apple with a lot more stuff, data, whether it be personal or otherwise, credit card or otherwise, than we do for most other companies. And I've said it before on the show, I have no problem giving Apple my credit card information. I have a big problem giving it to Microsoft or Google or just about any other damn company except for my bank and Apple. Do you think... This is a two-part question. Do you think this will affect that impression of Apple? And the other aspect of the question is, do you think this encourages or forces Apple to do more than what they need to or should to protect our data and security?
Well, answering part 2 first, I think absolutely it's a wake-up call for Apple in terms of, at a minimum, consumer awareness of security. Apple is a company that absolutely has to have the trust of its customers, as you said. I think the blind spot or the focus has been primarily on the financial information. iTunes, the iTunes Store represents one of the largest, if not the largest, repositories of consumer credit card information in the economic universe, and it's an extremely valuable one because it allows Apple to deliver goods and services and purchases in a very seamless, effortless experience for those customers because that credit card information lives in iTunes.
Yeah.
Apple has been very careful about that, and the areas where it has fallen down a little bit have tended to be around things like in-app purchases by kids and some of those other kind of gray areas. Very, very unlikely that there's a credit card data specific breach at Apple in the manner there was, say, at Target or Home Depot or other retailers.
Yep.
In large part because Apple takes this very seriously. The flip side of that is that some of the other areas maybe have not gotten as much attention. And going back to part one of your question, which was not about how Apple it's going to be a wake-up call, but whether you think it's going to affect consumer confidence in Apple, I believe. I think that there's a risk of people going for some cargo cult security, as like the idea that you hear something passed along through several layers of Aunt Marge posting it on Facebook, and suddenly people are doing things that don't make any technical sense. Facebook Messenger application, by the way, great example of this, where something that the core Facebook app was going to be doing, which was listening to music, got conflated with an app asking for standard Android permissions, and suddenly people are doing exorcisms on their phones because they've downloaded Facebook Messenger and it's sapping their vital bodily fluids. I do think there's a risk of some of that backlash for Apple, and what's really unfortunate about it is it's going to affect two critical areas. One is iCloud backup, which by some accounts is probably the vector that these attackers use to get these pictures from these celebrities. That's a great and important service, and it means that people who were never backing up their phones and their devices before are being backed up, but now they may not be because they're going to make bad choices and they're not going to do the manual backups. It's also going to affect photo storage and photo stream, and that's really unfortunate timing for Apple because, of course, photo storage and keeping your photos in iCloud is a big part of iOS 8 and presumably was going to be a big part of the conversations next week.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting, too, is to see how, because we're assuming that some of the conversation next week is going to be about your wallet, about buying things with various Apple devices. Part of it's going to be about your health and your personal health data. And so all of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying for a second that this was a intentional breach or leak. If you read the backstory on this picture stuff has been around for at least the last 2 weeks. This isn't breaking just because Apple's announcements of next week, because it wouldn't make any sense. If you wanted to ruin Apple because of this, you would break this story the same day. Because what's going to happen is the media is going to get tired of this, as the media does, after 2 or 3 news cycles, and I guarantee you the vast majority of the media will not talk about this Tuesday come 11 a.m. Pacific time next week. There may be some sites that say, hey, Apple just announced this, but hey, remember Jennifer Lawrence got nude pictures? That's not going to happen. But like you said, someone's going to read something on Facebook, or they're going to hear it fourth hand through somebody at work, and they're going to hear these things about Apple's insecure, and Apple wants your health data, and that could be troublesome for Apple. So I think that's, if Apple's changing their presentation next week, I think that's what they're changing it, to reassure people that we've got your best interests at heart when it comes to your wallet, to your health, and to your home. 3 things that are very, very important to each and every one of us.
Absolutely. Nobody wants their front door lock or their health records to be subjected to the prying fingers of somebody who is cracking into iCloud backups. Yep. It's interesting. A mutual friend of ours, who shall remain nameless, was floating the this is a conspiracy theory around this, plus a couple of other, the Eva Longoria story about Apple Store employees creep stalking her. Yep. I think it's easy to see potential conspiracies. It's easy to see this as a competitive strike on Apple and Apple's stock price, whatever. But that would require a degree of malicious intent and conspiratorial bent that would be epic but it seems quite unlikely, and far more likely that, as you said, this image collection has been going on for quite some time. The perpetrators apparently were trading these images for quite a while, and the corpus of images just happened to leak all at once, probably in a way that the people who were involved with this would not have wanted to see, in large part because it means that some or all of them are going to get arrested.
One of the things that I've read because of all this stuff is that, these images have been around for a long period of time, and the reason why they eventually went public was because they were being sold on various 4chan channels and other places, and the prices kept going down and down as the weasels undercut each other for the prices until the price eventually became free, and someone decided, well, if they're free, I'll send them out to the entire world. This was not a concerted campaign by Samsung, because even if it was, it would be stupid to do it this week instead of next week. The damage would have been to have Tim Cook have to answer these questions next week when he wants to talk about the iPhone 6 or the next version of the iPad or HomeKit or whatever it might be. So this is not. And
nobody drops a story like that on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the worst possible time. I mean, it's a slow news week, but if you thought that the whole if you were under the mistaken impression that a story about erotic pictures or naked pictures of celebrities was not going to get traction on a regular day, with the exception of Russia invading Estonia, I think you probably were pretty safe that it was going to be a big story.
The other funny thing I saw, people were talking about it along those lines too, that this was going to, and someone, MacMan in our RC chat room just said, speaking of stock price, Apple just got cored today. It dropped $4. That's nothing. That's not. Yeah, and by the way, that joke was made 35 years ago. MacMan, retire it, okay?
beating that dead horse. Well, it's 4% drop. It's not unsubstantial, but you're looking at a run up from the 52-week low is like 68 split adjusted, and it's at 100 now. I mean, I took a hit. I think anybody who has a position in Apple took a hit, but it's not. It's not one of those things that is going to necessarily slow down, prove to be more than a temporary drag on the stock. It's really unfortunate because it is obviously a personal tragedy for the people involved, and it's also a difficult moment for us as a consumer society because it's clear that we are going to be living in the cloud. The question is, are we going to be living in a cloud that is comfortable and well-appointed, where we feel comfortable and secure, or we're going to be living in a cloud with bars on the doors and guards at the windows. And it seems more and more likely that it's going to be the latter. It's just unfortunate.
Sad but true. Folks, we're talking to Mike Rose of TUAW. He's got a great article up at TUAW called Think iCloud's Two-Factor Authentication Protects Your Privacy? It doesn't. I encourage you to read it. I encourage you to learn as much about this stuff as you possibly can. And if you so choose, turn on two-factor authentication. But be very aware, as Mike makes very clear in his article, it doesn't protect you as much as you think it will, and it doesn't protect you as much as other services might. So take a look at what Apple offers, what Google offers, what other companies offer. It's an interesting issue. I encourage you to learn about it, if nothing else, because most of the folks in the audience are the geeks and the nerds of your family, because you're going to want to explain this to them. You're going to want to find some way to explain this to them and encourage them to use this kind of stuff, because it is confusing, it is difficult, it is annoying, but it's, as Mike said, the world we live in. They're going to have to do it eventually, sooner or later, so it's better for them to be armed with good information as opposed to stuff they learned on Facebook, for crying out loud. Mike Rose from TUAW, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Shawn. Good to see you as always.
You too. Have a good night. See ya.
You too.
Well, thanks to Mike for doing that. I always appreciate it. I got to get Mike on the show more often because I like talking to Mike. Yes, he said he told in the chat room. Yes, I got to do that. Why don't I do that?
Anytime.
I don't want to hear him. Go away. Stop talking. Get up. His mic's still up. Hang on. Mute. You can hang out, Mike, if you want. You can join the chat room, talk to folks. I'm still going to start. Make that a note to get Mike on the show more often. Talking now about our starting point photography.com segment. By the way, I'm so excited. So excited. Check it out. Groupon.com. We got a Groupon going on. Your Mac Life story. Starting point photography. We've got a Groupon for, it's a terrible Groupon, by the way. Oh my God, it's awful. It's poorly written. It's accurate, but it's not written very well, so I hope this thing sells. because my business partner and my business partner sunk a lot of frickin' money in this thing. So I want it to be a success for her, if nothing else. But yeah, so we worked with Groupon to get this deal going. We've got 8 classes going on here in the Lower Mainland of Vancouver. We've got classes at the beautiful Van Dusen Gardens. We've got classes at the spectacular West Van Public Library and Vancouver Public Library downtown. A beautiful, beautiful building, and out at British Columbia Institute of Technology in Burnaby. $80 gets you a full day of classroom and an hour-and-a-half photo walk afterwards. So what you learn in the class, you then take to the photo walk that we'll do afterwards. And in the wintertime, we're going to have models come in because it'll be too rainy and wet and yucky here in Vancouver. So we're going to have models come in the wintertime. People take model shots. If you know anyone in Vancouver who is interested in photography, maybe intimidated by photography, I think my class is going to be a good one, because, as I always tell folks, the class is about how to take better pictures no matter what camera you use. You don't have to have a fancy DSLR. You don't have to have a big camera with a big lens on it. Your iPhone, your Android phone, your a point-and-shoot camera, all those phones, you can learn to take better pictures using those. So please, if you know anyone in Vancouver, hook them up with our Groupon. Makes a great gift. One of the things I've been looking at is this thing called light trail photography. And what that is basically, no matter what camera you have, you set it up, and all cameras have a shutter, this thing that opens up to let light in and then closes again. That's that click sound you hear when someone takes a picture. So what it is, when that opens up, light comes in. When it closes, light stops, hitting the sensor, hitting the film, hitting the bits in the back, and it creates the image. Obviously, the longer that shutter's open, the more light can come in, and that affects your image. Well, at night, you want to open your shutter up for a very long time. That's why it's so hard to take decent nighttime pictures with the iPhone, because you can't control the shutter to have it stay open. And even if you could, you can't really hold a camera still for more than about 1/10 of a second. You think you can? When you're holding up your iPhone, you think you're being steady, but you're really not. Your heartbeat moves your arms. Your natural motion moves your body around. So that's what a lot of folks have problems with when they try to shoot with the iPhone in dark places, whether it be a bar or a restaurant or outdoors in the evenings. Any amount of shake on your iPhone causes blur. So what you have to do, you got to find a tripod. You got to find some sort of device that will steady your iPhone or your point and shoot or your DSLR. Something that will hold it steady while you have that shutter open for as long as possible. So I went down to our, what we call here in Vancouver, the Pacific National Exhibition. It's our version of a state fair here in Vancouver, and set a tripod up and pointed it at my subject. And that's when the fun started to happen. That's when I always talk to folks about the creative aspect of photography, which is an aspect of photography I absolutely love. The idea of seeing an image and then recreating that image on the camera in the computer. But there's also a technical aspect of photography that I also like. The idea that you have to know how your camera works in order to take better pictures, or at least in order to more consistently take better pictures. You don't have to know how the iPhone works to take great shots, but if you want to consistently take great shots, you've got to know at least a little bit about how cameras in general work and what your iPhone can and can't do. So what happens in this case is I put my DSLR up on a tripod, I frame it up to the image I want to get. I look in the viewfinder, I look in the screen in the back, and all you see is the image. And then you open the shutter, you push the button. I actually have a electronic remote, because what happens is when you push the shutter on the camera, your camera moves. So you push the shutter and you push the shutter button and the shutter opens up, you move the camera. To close the shutter, you push the button again and you move the camera. So that, again, introduces blur. So what you want to do is have an electronic or a cable release. You'll see some photographers use a little like plunger type thing to trip the shutter on their camera. So what happens is I push the remote, and it takes the shot. Now, the shot is bad the first time. It was an awful shot the first time I took it. So I had to mess around. This is the technical aspect of photography. I had to mess around with the f-stop, with the shutter speed, and with the ISO. That's the three triangles of photography: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. And that was kind of fun, because what happened was I took the picture, I looked at the picture, and then I realized, okay, what's wrong with the picture? It's too dark, it's too light, whatever it is. And I examined the picture and said, okay, if it's too dark, what do I need to do? What of the photography triangle do I need to change in order to fix this? Do I need to increase the ISO? Do I need to decrease the aperture? Do I need to decrease or increase the shutter speed? And that was fun. That was, and it might sound kind of geeky, but that was the fun aspect of creating these light trail images for me, was trying to figure this stuff out, trying to manipulate the camera to do this. Now, it's a lot harder to do this on an iPhone. An iPhone, in general, does not have the ability with the native applications to do this kind of stuff. You can't control the shutter. You can't control the ISO. You can't control the exposure. Now, coming up on iOS 8, you will be able to. And shortly after iOS 8, I've heard from many photography app developers, they're going to be building this stuff into their app. So you'll be able to do a lot of manual control. But there are some apps you can buy. I use one called Slow Shutter, which does exactly that. It takes over the shutter of the camera and opens it up for a much longer period of time. Slow Shutter is available on the iTunes Store. So there's a couple other apps that will allow you to do that. And then what you have to do is you've got to play around with the shutter to see what works best for your images. Which ones are going to make the images that you want to come out. And it's fun and funny to play with this stuff. I'm trying to find an example image for you guys to show you that how I manipulated this stuff, sort of like a before and after. Yeah, this one works. So check this out. This is a Ferris wheel type image. And if you notice, for those folks watching the video, I don't know if you can see this, but it says that it's a 1 second exposure, so the shutter was left open for a full second at f5, so it's a fairly narrow aperture with ISO 800. And that's kind of dark. You can see that that image is kind of dark. So I looked at the image and realized, okay, if it's dark, what do I got to do to fix it? Well, what I did was I changed the length of time the shutter was open. This shot is a 2 second shot. Left the aperture at the exact same, so left basically the focus at the exact same, and increased the ISO, or increased the sensitivity to light. And you can see the difference in the shot from this dark background to you can actually see the clouds in the second shot. So what you do with light trails is you hold down your device, whether it's your iPhone or your smartphone or your point and shoot or your DSLR. You mount it somewhere. You can use a Joby Gorilla Pod if you'd like. You can use this little cheap-ass tripod I bought at Best Buy. It's got some little legs on it that go up and down. I couldn't put a DSLR on this because it flops over, but I can use this for an iPhone. You use an app that allows you to control the functions of the iPhone. And again, in iOS 8, this is going to be built into it. And you mess around with it. You can. Oh, the other aspect of it is, I can't find a little trick, though. I'm surprised so few people know this little trick. Remember I talked about the shutter release, that I have a remote electronic shutter release for my Nikon D600, and some folks will use a cable release. It's a cable that plugs into their camera. Well, you have a cable release for your iPhone. Apple sold you one. Apple gave you one when you bought your iPhone. You just might not even know that you got it. You know what it is? It's your headphones. The headphones, any headphones, I've tried this out with any kinds of headphones that have got the volume buttons on it. The speaker, it's not the speaker, but the microphone and volume buttons on the wires of the headphones. So the Apple earbuds do it. My Etymotics do it. Shure's do it. All kinds of companies do it. Well, it's neat. The volume button on that headphone works as a remote shutter, as long as it's plugged in. You plug your headphones into your iPhone, mount it to a device, and now you can fire the shutter using the headphones. So you don't have to touch the camera and thereby causing it to shake. You can just remotely fire using that. Are there any apps that you guys use? Anyone try these kind of things? One of the fun things you can do is go to a city street and get these really cool light trail shots of cars that go by. Go to a busy street and just set your camera up. I've done it on top of mailboxes. I've put my iPhone on top of a newspaper box or a mailbox, and taken video and taking pictures of cars as they go by. You don't need a really long shutter. The shutter doesn't have to be open for a very long time. These shots I'm showing you guys are generally under. This is 1.3 seconds. This is a 3-second shot. The shutter's open for 3 seconds, and again, you can't hold your camera still enough to get these shots for 3 seconds. This is a 5-second shot. 2.5 seconds. So there's a 1 second. So you can see the difference a lot of these are ones I threw away. But you can see the difference in the images in a very short period of time, that you can get some pretty cool images with this light trail stuff. And so if you find yourself out walking around, you're going on an evening walk and you have your iPhone with you and you have your headphones, listen to music and sort of wandering around, give this a try. Set your iPhone up on the sidewalk. You can do it on the ground. Point it at a busy street, or on top of a mailbox, or on top of a newspaper box, and play around with this stuff and see what you can get out of your camera at night. Because generally the iPhone is not a very good camera at night. It's tough to take good night shots on the iPhone because you need more light. But if you learn how to open your shutter up for longer, that lets in more light, and you'll probably get more better, interesting shots. So give that a try when you get a chance. I want to say thanks very much to our guests on tonight's show, our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Don't forget, Amplified will be available on the iTunes Store sometime tomorrow. You can do a search for it on the iTunes Store, Amplified, or go to 5by5.tv/Amplified. It will be available up there. And again, thanks to my good friend Mike Rose from TUAW. Mike has been a friend for many, many years. And like I said, I've got to find ways to... See? He's such a good friend. Look at this. I have a picture of him up on my wall. You guys can't see it, but that's Mike. That's me and Mike at the Yankee Stadium. Mike's in New York, so he and I went to a Yankees game. I don't have pictures of any other friends. Just you, Mike. On my wall. So thanks very much to Mike Rose from TUAW for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And to all you guys for being tuned into the show, as always, each and every week, I thank you guys very much for joining us. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya. It went to sleep. See, I did that, and I did it wrong. Because what happened was the Mac Mini I used went to sleep for the music. Hang on. I gotta wake up the Mac Mini. Wait. Stupid Mac Mini. Always sleeping. Okay, now I gotta wait. You guys can go. It's no. Yeah, I know. I should be nice to the Mac Mini. It's a little workhorse, poor little thing. It got tired and had a nap. Okay, here we go. Try this again. Thanks very much, guys, for being here. As always, I've been Shawn King. You've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya.